What's up, YouTube? It's a Convicts Perspective with your homie Rojo.
Your boy Flacco. So in this edition, we're going to be discussing bonds 11 through 14, and we're going to close it out. Bond number 11. It is each Norteño's sole duty to teach in school all those destined to the Pinta. No Norteño should enter the Pinta blind or without knowledge of our struggle behind the walls.
Yeah, this one's important, man. Like, when I came into prison in early 93, I was barely 18. I came out of Contra Costa County, which at the time, man, there wasn't a lot of homeboys, and those that were there weren't very well educated. And I came into prison not knowing nothing, man. We'd sleep all day in the county, and people would be using drugs, with the white boys, and we didn't really have any enemies. I mean, like I said before, the white boys weren't too fond of me, but it is what it is. But, man, I didn't learn nothing, man. I didn't learn nothing about security, weaponry, taking any kind of reports, I had zero observation skills, man. I went into San Quentin, and, man, the people there, they're coming from Salinas, they're coming from Sanjo, they're coming from all these places that are very, very well schooled. And I came in there, and they must have thought I was just dumb or something, because it's not really anybody's fault, man, that the county was behind. There's nobody to point blame to it. There just wasn't the huge history of education there. There'd be a couple homeboys here or there. They were always locked up or on drugs or whatever. So they weren't really sharing the information, man. And I came in there wild, and I used to get in trouble all the time. I tried to fight other homeboys over, dumb stuff like basketball. I'd go in there and I'd sleep. I had no clue what was going on because nobody took the time to teach me. And as I got more educated, I became, a pretty seasoned in. I took it upon myself to make sure, I went out to court on my first term, and I brought a lot of knowledge back with me that, a lot of the homeboys from my county weren't real receptive to. They were like, well, who's this dude? He's been to the pen, and he's got him a little Mongolian, and he's trying to tell me how I need to act in here. So Contra Costa County was a really tough one to get, the manpower up to par. And even to this day, as far as I understand, there's still a little trouble, with this generation, man. There's a lot of different influences in the Bay Area than there are in the more traditional northern strongholds. And it's been a weak point, man. There a lot of people that come out of Contra Costa, they're not functioning up to the levels of the other areas, and that's just based on their lifestyle on the streets. I came into Martinez after doing about a year and some change up in Susanville, and I learned a lot. And I came in and I tried to implement household policies. But, I was so young and still inexperienced myself that no matter how much I told these dudes or taught them or explained to them why, they were just like, whatever, So it took a few years, when I finally came back as a bro, I was real more assertive. And I made sure everybody was, functioning up to par. They were getting educated. They were, being taught what to expect when they got to prison. And, I think I made it better. But, man, that's a real weak point with some of these places sending people to prison and them not having no idea what to expect when they get there.
Yeah, this all starts basically when you're in the county jail and you find a young northerner who's about to do some time. You start basically giving them the basic education about security, about how to safeguard yourself, and security always starts within yourself. Then you give them a little bit of history as far as about the NF and how the cause originated. So the whole point of this is to have a northerner enter the prison to where they know what to expect, to where they're not blind. They know what they're representing. They know what the cause is about. They can come in and fall and file and be a productive household member and continue to strive. And see, this is where it all starts for any young northerner behind the walls. It's when I was in county jail, I was pulled to the side. I was in 6B, and I started getting a lot of clecha. They put me in with another bro, and he started listening to me and taking up over my education and breaking down certain things from the bonds and format and giving me the whole history. And the whole purpose was for me to understand what I was and what I was representing. And I took that fire and I started striving and I started pushing myself and learning about what the NR was and structure and what it meant to be a hermano and what the C's had been through and the struggles and many sacrifices that have been made, because on the streets, we're kind of blind to that. Now on the streets, as far as in certain areas like Salinas and Sanjo, you got young northerners out there in the streets that are already knowing the bonds and formats, to where all this information was basically privileged at that time. So this is what this bond is basically about, is basically taking those who who are sit on that life to go to prison, to basically give them enough teachings to where they can follow this path and be a productive household member.
Yeah, when I showed up to prison, man, I thought it was the same as the streets. I was ready to take flight on anybody that I deemed was the enemy. And, if I would have done that, man, that could have caused a wreck through the whole prison just by not being abreast of what the cause was really about. You know what I mean? So it's important to teach your young homies, whether on the streets, whether in the county jail, whatever you need to know so they don't get themselves in a wreck in there, because they'll wreck you fast.
So here we go. Bond number 12. All Nortenos will protect and defend their household to the fullest, no matter the consequences or circumstances. This means standing next to a fellow Norteño or the cause, both battle or struggle. To abandon such a responsibility would be considered an act of treason.
Yeah, that's basically, man, if you know it's about to pop off, you gotta represent for yourself and your household. You can't be there can't be no cowardice. I mean, you can't be, oh, well, he's right there with the block gun, or they're gonna pepper spray me, or there's 30 of them and only 5 of us. Man, you got to get out there and shine. You know what I mean? That's what's going to be expected of you. Anything less than that, after all said and done, man, you're going to have to answer for that. So that's one thing. And, this is one thing we're trying to promote to the younger people, is that this is a really serious cause. It's one thing on the streets to gangbang and, hide behind a gun and, have all kinds of escape avenues, and, your homeboys are strapped too. You go to prison, man, sometimes you ain't strapped. Sometimes all of a sudden it just happens. There's nowhere to run. You're not going to shoot from a car. You're not going to be able to do none of those easy things. You're going to have to get up you're going to have to be right there toe to toe with a man that might have a piece, and if you back down or show any kind of weakness, that's going to be the end of your career. You might, man, if you just didn't perform up to par, you might get a chance at some retribution. But if you show any kind of being scared or not following an order or doing something that you volunteer, see, a lot of people don't know this. You're not necessarily obligated to do things depending on your status as a regular Northerner, Norteño, whatever you want to call it. But when you say, hey, I'll take care of this, now you're obligated. You obligated yourself, and there's no backing out from that. Now you've put yourself in a position where, if you were a higher level individual, if you were a bro or a C, once you say, I'll take care of this, your word is taken right then. There's no backing away. So you can't. People don't go to prison and think, oh, well, I'm not obligated to do this or that. Man, if it kicks off and you don't do anything, it's over for you.
Yeah, this goes with any implementations within any household. If this means we're going to do a hunger strike, you're going to do a hunger strike. If this means we're going to basically take any type of stand towards the administration, you're going to take that stand. And that could mean you're going to catch some time. And so if any individual who decides to breach this law, like Rojo said, there's some people that get backs, but a lot of times you're going to be straight dinged. A lot of times there ain't going to be no salvage your career.
Yeah, and remember, it's not easy being a Northerner, man. There's a lot that's expected from you, man. And like Flaco said, there's going to be situations where, man, you might be looking at all day. You might be looking at 10 years, a DA referral. You might be looking at getting taken out by the tower. And if you hesitate, if you don't follow through with your instructions, or you don't follow through with the word that you've given to take care of something, that's it. Your career is done, period.
I'm going to use an example of this bond violation. Okay, so when I was in DVI, we kicked it off with the wolf packs, like I discussed in a previous video. And there was a soldado there that had a K number from Santa Clara. Okay, he was 10 feet away, while another bro, Cisco from or Monster from Susanville, was getting rushed by 8 or 10 skinheads. And this came back from 3 different reports of him being jumped. Now, this individual that had a K number, he was with some first termer. Okay, what he decided to do was, instead of getting off, he lay down. He got down and was hiding in the shadows. So based upon the fact that he knew better, I deemed the individual no good, and I had him hit. Now, his cellie was a first termer. So based upon the fact that this is one time where I did try to salvage a career, because he doesn't know any better. They were both from the same hood. So he was following his big homie who's done time for over like 12 years, who should know better. He's following his lead. And even the individual filed his report, oh, I didn't get off. That's a clear act of a cowardice act of straight desertion. And it's the easiest way to get deemed no good. So if you're there, everybody knows anytime it's time to get off or defend the household, you're supposed to do it to the fullest.
Yeah, just remember, man, you get enough time and you end up on one of them level 4 yards, your life and your freedom are gonna be in jeopardy every single time you go to the yard.
So here we are. We're going to go to bond number 13. All Norteños paroled to the street will be educated to our prison conditions and circumstances. Therefore, understand it is not mandatory but strongly encouraged to aid two fellow soldados behind the wall in accordance to their financial abilities. It's crucial and necessary if we are to continue with the advancement of the elite circle of the dedicated Norteño soldados.
So basically, man, whether you are, functioning a regiment on the streets or not, you've been to prison. You know what I mean? You know that times are tough in there. You may not have had family that took care of you, friends or whatnot, but you've seen that there's brothers in there without anything. And not always you're going to be on a yard that's making its own money, man. Sometimes things are tough. Sometimes things aren't coming through visitation. Sometimes there's not that much of a hustle, It comes and goes, man. Sometimes you could be shining. Sometimes you're not eating very good, man. So what this is saying is whether or not you're out there functioning and participating in a regiment and kicking in your monthlies or whatnot, being that you were part of this group, man, they're basically encouraging you to, hey, you remember how it was in there. Why don't you go ahead and, find two dudes that aren't doing too swell or who the household, says needs assistance. And hopefully it's just not based on any kind of rank or nothing. And sometimes it is. We've been through that one. But man, just remember where you came from. Remember, the other brothers in there that might have been sacrificing, that might not have been eating, that might have a long time, no family. Wife might have left them. Parents might be deceased. Whatever the case may be, man. It's just saying, man, don't forget this, man. You take this lesson with you and try to help somebody out who needs your help.
Yeah, and like it says, like you have individuals that come into a household, they have nothing. They take from our tiendas, they get their little care packages, whatever the household has that's going on, they reap the benefits of. So bond 12 is about understanding the conditions because each facility may be different. Like in San Quentin, I think in the whole, it was stamps was a big deal because we could invest that into tobacco. You know what I'm saying? With the tobacco, you could even make more money. We could quadruple our money. So it says that this is not mandatory, but basically, if you don't honor this, there'll be adverse consequences upon your status when you return. This is where the terminology elite comes into a factor. An elite soldado is gonna do everything by the book and represent his people. And I remember around 2005 or 6, there was a mandate that came down from the Pelican Bay, like I just talked about. I think the first time that you didn't honor this bond, I think it was frontline status and a discipline. Second time, it was a fine, frontline status, and discipline. And then the third time, it was frontline discipline, a fine, and you were stripped of your soldado status.
Yeah, when I first started learning the bonds, personally, in my experience, it wasn't enforced. They weren't, unless you obligated yourself, unless you told, a certain individual, hey, I'm going to look out for you, or you told whoever, was running the household that, hey, I'm going to look out for such and such. It wasn't enforced. People would parole and, they just go on about their business, man. It wasn't, something that was mandatory or even really, man, it was encouraged, bro. But people would come and go so often in a lot of these places that, nobody kept tabs on them. But nowadays, man, they're a little more strict. Like Flacco was saying, there's consequences for not doing that. So, here's another one of those for examples, man. Remember, you come to prison as a northerner, your obligation's not necessarily complete, and you come out and you leave the prison, even though you didn't, affiliate yourself with no organization. Man, you're still expected to perform for that organization, So you guys got to remember that, man. When you want to come into prison and be all you could be, that although you don't think you're making some kind of commitment for life or joining any kind of organization, man, you're still going to be expected to perform in some form or fashion.
So we're going to go into bond number 14 and close this out. All Norteños shall stay abreast of all new rules, policies, and procedures. No portion of this format is to be misinterpreted or abused for one's personal gain. To do so will be considered as an act of treason.
Yeah, basically, man, you just gotta, man, when you get information from any place, that you deem reliable through your channels, through, whoever you're messing with on the streets that's in a position to dictate any kind of policies, your obligation is to share it and make sure that you're abreast of it. If you see something, man, and people know you've seen it, you're going to be held accountable. There's not going to be none of that, oh, well, I didn't know. Well, man, it was filtered through there while you were there, brother, so, man, you got to stay on top of everything that's going on at all times, man. You got to try to establish your own channels. Even if you're on the streets and you don't plan on coming back and you're not functioning out there, man, you should still need to know what's going on because, Man, I went back to prison in '06. I ain't never heard of no Northern Riders. What if I would have been out somewhere and I'd have been like, well, hell with them guys or whatever, not knowing they're super deep. You just got to know what's going on, man. You represent this thing. It's not a part-time thing, man. You're making a lifetime commitment, whether you guys realize it or not. Once you've been in these prisons and jails and you know what's going on, man, and you're seasoned, you're going to be expected to conduct yourself like that all the time, man. You might run into somebody on the streets, be like, hey, well, what are you doing? Who you helping out? And there you are on Front Street, man. I wasn't doing nothing for nobody, man. You just got yourself into wreck, man. So if you think you can be part of any kind of political organization behind the walls or criminal organization, however you want to categorize it as, man, it's going to be a commitment that's a lot more than you're going to realize if you're not very, very well seasoned coming in.
And so the key word at the end of this will be considered an act of treason. So anytime you utilize these bonds for any type of personal gain, like it's whether you file charges against someone or deem someone no good and try to flip the script against an individual, or you start to implement your own laws, or you try to feel like you're of rank and status because you know these bonds, it's going to be the quickest way that you're going to be deemed no good. And with that, we're going to end this session, man. Convicts Perspective, please hit the like and subscribe.
Thank you. Have a good day, YouTube.